Hello everyone. I asked you all to do a mid-semester survey so we could see where we are in the course right now, and so I'd like to give you some feedback on the survey, what it showed, and talk about some ways to make mid-course corrections, because that's what it's for. Ultimately, the goal is to make the class a good learning experience. The mid-semester survey consisted of 10 questions, 9 true, false, yes, no, and one open-ended question. Everyone except for 2 people responded, so we had good, it's a good representation of the course. So I'll go through them as they appeared in the survey. So the first question asked if the student had an interest in this course, and 95% of the folks said yes, they do have an interest in the class, so that's good. 93% of the respondents felt that the content that they're learning is useful, so that's always helpful, that people feel that they're getting something out of the course. There's nothing worse than being in a class that you don't want to be in and that you feel is irrelevant. So 93% of you said that you felt that the content is useful. So 90% of you felt that there's enough time to complete the work for this course. There are readings for the course. There may be some videos that come up later. There are projects for the course. So you had one project which was very short, ethno-health interview. There is a reflection or a commentary paper that has to be done, and the last 2 are more projects, but like with groups. So unfortunately, there's not enough time during the class to complete all of this, so some of that has to be done outside and on your own. But it looks like the work is not, for the most part, is not too heavy for the majority of people. I understand that it can be difficult if people are working a lot or if they have other responsibilities. So when they're competing priorities for time, it can make coursework a little bit more stressful. So I understand instructions for this course. There were a lot of comments on this, and I see that it's a problematic area because only 44% of you feel that you understand the instructions for the course. So as an instructor, this is very concerning, and because my goal is for everyone to have the best learning experience possible and to do their very best. And so if you're not understanding the instructions, then it's my job to help you better understand those instructions. So we will talk about this more next week, and I'll be thinking about some ways that I can help elucidate the questions that you might have and take away some of the anxiety around instructions for the course. The instructor is approachable. Again, this is troubling as an instructor because about only half of you feel that I am approachable, and that's a problem if people are going to have a good learning experience. You should be able to approach your faculty with questions, comments, etc. So there were a couple of comments that spoke to that, but they weren't really in detail about what makes me not approachable. So I'm not quite sure what I can do for that. I think it would be good if people could give some suggestions on how I might be more approachable. I'm trying to be at class a little bit early. Definitely I stay late for people who have questions or they need answers. Answering emails in a quick, in a responsive way. So I'm not sure how else to be more approachable, but obviously if you think I'm not, then there's something I'm not doing. So I can't fix that if people don't explain that a little bit better, So I would appreciate it if folks could tell me how I might be more approachable for them. And I think we can mention this next week as well. Oh, I do want to say that if anybody wants to send me an email, the questions on the survey were anonymous, but obviously your email's not going to be anonymous. I'll know who you are, but you shouldn't be threatened by sending me an email with whatever your thoughts and concerns are. So because if I didn't want to know, then I wouldn't have asked the question. So if you want to contribute something before next Friday, you want to shoot me an email and let me know how we can work at this issue, or if you have suggestions, then let me know. I appreciate it. Thanks. The instructor responds to emails in a timely fashion. So only 89% of you feel that I respond to emails in a timely fashion. I do have something in the syllabus about if people email late at night or over the weekend, I might not get back to you until the next business day. Like that's that you would have an answer within the next business day. I haven't gotten a ton of emails from people, but I don't think they sit very long. I don't think one has sat more than 24 hours. If you have sent an email and you don't get a response within 24 hours, if it's a business day, then please resend the email again. I will remind you all, like I did from the first day of class, that I get a ton of emails. And so if I open your email and I don't have an opportunity to respond right away, it might be buried, or maybe I don't see it. If you're not using your Rutgers account, your name at sn.rutgers.edu, your email may not be coming to me. So if you don't want to use that email, the other thing I would say to you is that you can go into the course and you can send me an email from the course and I'll get it, because of the security systems that we have with Office 365 or whatever this Outlook email is that we have. It has to be HIPAA compliant and FERPA compliant and all this other stuff. So things get filtered out. So if you sent me an email and you think I should have answered it, please resend it. Or if you want to make 100% sure that I get it, you can go into the course and you can send me the email from the course and I'll definitely get it. So I asked if the amount of information in the course was too little or adequate. About 16% of you actually want more information in the course, but we'll go with the majority. 84% of the folks said they felt the course material was adequate. If you are one of the 16% who wants more course information or more information, please see me. Come and talk to me, ask me, and I am happy to give you more. To talk to you more, to explain things more. I mean, I don't know what more means, but happy to help anybody who feels that they want to learn more on this subject. Send me an email or come and talk to me. So I asked if people felt like they were getting feedback in a timely manner. 74% of you said yes. The first assignment, which was that the ethno-health interview, it took a little bit longer than I had anticipated to grade. This is probably the largest course that I've had in this, the largest group that I've had in this course. So for subsequent assignments, to get things back a little bit faster, the assignments will be split between myself and the TA. And hopefully by doing that, we'll be able to get your feedback to you a lot faster. In terms of the exam, I think those questions were back to you, or I think that the test feedback was back by maybe Wednesday or so. We have to wait until everybody takes the test. So if there are people who haven't taken the tests yet, that affects the course statistics, or the analysis statistics. So everyone has to take the course first, and then I need time to go through and do the analysis of the questions, the item analyses. And once that's finished, then I can post the grades. So my goal is to try to get those the test grades back within, like, 2 to 3 business days after the exam is taken. And then, of course, the real-time assessments, they are where they are. Those are more low stakes, and we'll talk about those as well. But hopefully this helps you understand about the other feedback. And if there's other feedback in general that you're referring to that I didn't cover in this, then please let me know. So then I asked, how am I doing? Dr. Bowen is doing a good job teaching this course. It's almost 50-50. Half of you said yes, and about half said no. Just under half said no. So any suggestions that we might have for helping me to do better at teaching this course would be appreciated. So if you feel I'm not meeting your educational needs, I can't fix that if I don't know about it. So if you could come and let me know. I think, this this survey was given on the day that we had the test feedback, so like last week. And people were angry with me, and so maybe that was stemmed from some of it. But if there were something outside of that, then again, I would need to know, because you can't, we can't fix things we don't know about. So again, you can feel free to send me an email, or you can come and talk to me after class, and or write an anonymous note or something and give it to me, or leave it on the desk, and I will look at that. But thank you, though, for the feedback. And so we're mid-course, and there's opportunities to make corrections all around. So let's see what we can do about this. The next 2 slides summarize the open-ended question that I asked. So not everybody responded and wrote comments, but the majority of you did, and I do appreciate the feedback. So what I did was I read through them all, and I just sort of wrote down the common themes and clusters that came up. All right, so this course would be better if we had low stakes test reviews. So I wrote low stakes. Those are my words. The words that came across in the survey responses were quizzes that didn't count, questions that didn't count toward the grade. So those real-time assessments are like 1 point. Those are considered extremely low test reviews. What we will do is Angie is working on creating some practice questions, and we can certainly do that and put them into the modules so that people can practice taking, NCLEX style test questions. In-class assessments were written like the test questions. We can do some of that. I've talked to Angie about it, and we will incorporate some NCLEX style questions in the real-time assessment questions. So those are more straightforward, like, do you understand the definition, etc., because we want to make sure that you understand the content before we move on. We don't want to leave anybody behind, or we may need to go back and touch on that. So it's a little bit more difficult to do with real-time assessments, because those, remember, are kind of like with NCLEX style questions, because those are mostly application questions. But so I need to know that you understand the material so that you can apply it. But we can certainly put some of those types of questions into the weekly discussion. So we will start doing that effective this next lecture. The course would be better if the test questions were not subjective, confusing, NCLEX format, if they didn't have scenarios, if they weren't so hard, and if they reflected the lecture material. So just to quickly address those, the NCLEX questions seem to be subjective because there can be multiple right answers, but what's the best answer? Or it's that one word that might make things different. Last week, I sent out some information on how to read and understand NCLEX type questions. So I put that out for everybody. I would really encourage you to read through them. There's a really good link that talks to you about how to interpret the stem of the question so that you can better answer it, okay? Scenarios allow us to test application. So, and scenarios are kind of how NCLEX questions are worded. So those won't go away, but what we can do is we can practice them more in a low stakes environment before they get to the test. If the test reflected the lecture material, there were a couple of questions that I did remove that went over material that was not well covered in class or even in the readings. So we will be going over those. I believe it had to do with acculturation and I can't think right now, but assimilation and acculturation. So we will go over those concepts again, but they were excluded from those questions were excluded. There were two very hard questions on the test, and those were excluded as well, meaning that if people didn't get them right, it didn't hurt them, but if you got them right, then you got to keep the credit for getting it right. People think the course would be better if we had more interactive learning experiences during class, and so we can certainly build more of that in to help ensure that we're grasping concepts and that we're able to utilize the work or the material that we're learning, and it will break up the monotony of the class. It is a 3-hour-long class. And so it does get boring when you're just listening to me talk. So, we do have some interactive experiences, but we'll try to pepper more through the course. I just want to go back real quick to this test question, reflected lecture material. I think sometimes that the questions may seem like they don't reflect the lecture material because, it's being presented to you in a very straightforward format, but then you don't have to apply it. And so when it comes time for application, where I may not ask what's the definition of, but I give you a situation and you need to recognize that this is X, which would require you to know and understand the definition of X, then it might seem like it's material that's not covered. So again, we'll try to practice more of those type questions so people won't be so surprised. The course would be better if there was more specific rationale for why answers are not correct. We are going to put more of that into the practice questions that we develop, and also when we go through in-class assessments and an answer's not right, we'll go through each one of them. I've tried to do that before to let people know why things aren't right. Within the exams themselves, I can certainly put in rationales for why an answer is correct and why the others are not correct. So when people go through and they look at their, they do the test review, those rationales will be there. So we can certainly put those in. The course would be better if the instructor communicated more clearly, wasn't biased, wasn't extremely rude, admitted when she was wrong, was easier to approach, and gave credit for problematic test questions. So, good thing I have a thick skin, right? So communicating more clearly, I think that had a lot to do. There were lots of comments about the assignments and what's expected on the assignments. So certainly the guidelines are written, and the rubrics are pretty clear on what you need to do, but I will take the time, or more time, to explicitly explain what's expected, and then if people have more questions, they'll be able to ask. So what I'm going to do is cut our class a little bit short and maybe leave the last 15 minutes of class to go over questions and answers, and if there are any projects or whatever that are coming up, that I can explain them to you. I will also make a recording and go over the guidelines and explain in detail what I'm expecting. So sometimes when you hear it, somebody tell you, as opposed to just reading it, it can make a little bit more sense. And also in this way, if I say something and you forget it later on, you can go back and you can listen to it to understand what's being expected in terms of the assignments. Now, for next week's assignment, which would have been the social determinants of health, the film commentary, I have pushed that back. So instead of being due next Friday, it'll be due after spring break. Certainly if people want to finish it up after next Friday and get it in, you're more than welcome to do that. But there were a lot of questions about what needed to be done. The rubric that was there was not very clear, so I have redone it, and it is I think it's more explicit than it had been, and the rubric, which will be up before the weekend is out, is very clear, so or more clear than what was on the other one. I've actually taken down what was there so people don't get more confused, and so certainly we will go over it on Friday so people can ask questions about what's expected of that assignment. If I wasn't biased, so people, I don't know if there's people, there's a couple of comments about how I'm biased when I talk about poverty and I talk about immigrants, and people were upset that I compared what is going on in our country today to what happened in Nazi Germany in terms of people not speaking up to injustices. So certainly if I say things and you have another opinion about it, then this is higher education. Put your hand up and give your opinion. People were also a little annoyed when folks talked about their experiences, and this is higher learning, and discourse is welcome. Discourse is part of learning. So it wasn't just Nazi Germany where this happened. It also happened here in the U.S. during World War II, where we rounded up all of the Asians, mostly Japanese, and we put them in internment camps. Now, they weren't killed and they didn't have horrible atrocities committed on them like the Jewish people did, but it was a wrong, and they were used as labor. They were used as laborers during that time that they were locked up, forced to work on farms and to build things that were necessary for the war, etc. So we don't have clean hands here in the U.S. But it is what it is. History is ugly. But certainly if people feel that what I'm saying is biased or unfair, then I would expect as adults and adult learners that we would speak up. And I'm happy to hear everyone's view or side, and I hope that people would feel free and safe enough to express themselves in this class. There was a comment that I'm not just rude, but extremely rude. I I'm not saying that I can't be rude, but I don't recall a time that I was, or I was extremely rude. And so if it was a one-on-one thing, or if I was rude to a group, again, you can't fix things that you don't know about. I can't fix things that I don't know about. So if I offended you, or if you felt I was rude, then, you know, it's part of being an adult and an adult learner. We should approach people that we feel who've done injustices or who've been rude to us, and talk to them. So if this comment was very, very detailed, I don't know who wrote it, but if you would feel comfortable talking to me about what that experience may have been, or something that I said or whatever that made you perceive that I was rude, I would be happy to hear that, because life is always a learning, an opportunity to learn. And there may have been some misunderstandings, so speaking to others is a mature way of getting these things aired out so that they don't fester. So we still have half a semester left, and hopefully I can hear from the people who are most concerned about these. That I wouldn't admit when I was wrong, I don't know what that is. That's pretty subjective. There were a lot of questions. I think there were a lot of well, this was a direct quote, that I wouldn't admit when I was wrong. But then there were a lot of comments about during the test, when people wanted more specifics, and I said, you know, all of the answers were right, but you had to pick the most right answer. You know, some people did say, oh, this wasn't covered well in class or whatever, and I said I would take those things into account, and I feel I did take them into account. So I went back after that review, I looked at everything. Someone made a comment that when I dropped questions that seemed that people didn't do well on, or they seemed extremely hard, that they were hurt in the process because they actually got the questions right. And so what I did was I went back, and you know, that was true. If you were able to get a super hard question correct, then why should you be penalized by having that point taken away when the question was dropped? So adjustments were made so that if people did not get the answer correct on a question that was dropped, it did not hurt them. But if a person did get the question correct on a question that was dropped, it didn't hurt them either in the end, because I still gave them credit. If they got it right and it ended up being dropped, they still got credit. So you can see from the last time you saw your raw score and what was posted that it did affect the adjustment. It did affect the adjustment in a positive way. So most people ended up getting a little bit higher of a score than they did before when I went back and did that. Okay, and then this is our last cluster of comments or themes. This course would be better if there were time for questions during class. I mentioned that a few slides back. I will take the last 15 minutes of class to specifically go over any questions folks may have. But please, during the lecture, when we're talking about things and when we're going over materials, if you don't understand, if you have a question, don't be afraid to put your hand up. Put your hand up and ask a question. I know sometimes people might be shy to ask questions during class, so I think what I'm going to do, I know what I'm going to do is I will create a Twitter account for the course, and people will be able to tweet their questions as we're going along in class. So if you are too shy to put your hands up, then you'll be able to tweet your question, and we will go to the Twitter, can go to the Twitter page, and I'll be able to see what questions folks have. So I'll institute that beginning the next class. The course would be better if assignments were explained better. I've talked about that. We'll be going over them more. I understood how I'm being graded. So I think people are still confused about this. There are scores in Top Hat. Top Hat is not the grade book that is being used for this course. The grade book is being kept in Canvas. Yes, there's data in Top Hat, but it's being kept in Canvas. So attendance counts. That's 3 points per class, and there's a rubric to explain how attendance is calculated, how an attendance score is calculated. So please check the rubric. There are real-time assessments, so these low stakes kind of quiz questions we have, and they have two parts to them. So Top Hat measures whether you got it right or wrong, and it also measures if you attempted. Okay, so if you attempt the question, you get a half a point. Whether you get it right or not, you get a half a point. And if you get it right, then you get a point. If it's being scored, because not every question that I put up like that is being scored. Sometimes it's just there and I want to see, what people are thinking. So there are some low stakes things in there where they're not being scored. So that's how those grades are being calculated. So if you're in class and something goes up, and before I gave, I don't know how much time I put up there to answer a question, and then people said, oh, it's way too much time to answer the question. So we cut it back to like 30 seconds or 60 seconds. I don't even think it's 60 seconds. It might be even 30 seconds to answer some of these real-time assessment questions. So if you don't answer within that time, then you don't get credit for participation. So even though you might be talking, if there's a question if there's a clicker question and you don't answer the clicker question in the amount of time, and it shows you how much time you have to answer the question. If you don't answer the clicker question in time, then you won't get credit for the question and you won't get credit for participation, even though you're there. And there are other, so it's not just that half a point. There's other participation, ways to participate, and those are being calculated as well. So that was broken out from attendance and participation. So you will see those being split out in the grade book, because it was lumped together, and then people were saying, well, how do I know what part was for participation and what part was for attendance if I came late or whatever. So that's why those are split out, so that they can be explicitly clear how folks are being measured on that. But if people, we went over this on the first day, but if you still have a question on how you're being graded or how you're being assessed, please see me. You can see me after class, you can see me before class. I don't have an office here in New Brunswick, but we can set up a time for virtual office sessions. I have office hours after class always. I stay in New Brunswick until about 5 o'clock in the evening. Some of you have taken me up on that. Even if you have a class after this one, you've come back over and I've sat with you and discussed your concerns. So I'm willing to do that as well. But it's very important that you understand how you're being graded. And so after explaining this, if you still don't understand, please reach out so we can discuss this more. The course would be better if we did not have tests to assess us, only projects. Well, everybody learns differently, so I've tried to make it fairly even. There are projects in this class. There's 2 projects in the class, and then there are quiz questions, and then there are written assignments as well. So everyone who excels in different ways should be able to do well in this course. Unfortunately, in nursing, we have to have assessments, we have to have tests and quizzes. So, or some people don't do quizzes, they just do tests, but the bottom line is we have to ask you questions. So not having those types of assessments, it's not appropriate for a course like this. And again, this will get you ready for what you have for your next 2 years in nursing. You won't have another course that you take that doesn't have tests in it. Yeah, you won't have any other classes like that. The course would be better if it wasn't at 8 a.m. on a Friday morning. Well, amen. I totally agree. A few of you mentioned that. Unfortunately, I don't get a chance to select the time of this course. I've been teaching this class for many, many years, and it's always been 8 a.m. on a Friday morning, which is an incredible drag. But it has to do with scheduling, and I don't know who the grand poobah is that decides that, but it's not my choice. So, I don't like getting up early either, but this is when the class is. The course would be better if it was held at a better location or a different location. Again, I don't have any influence over where the course is held. The rooms are assigned. Last semester we did have it at Patterson Street, and that was because the class was smaller. This year the class is much larger, so that's why we're here in this building, because we can accommodate the number of students. There just wasn't room. There was barely enough room for people last year. So, I guess that's a good problem that we have, that the program is growing, but everybody has to have a place to sit also. So this is and classes will be in this building for a long time. I understand we, meaning the School of Nursing, Rutgers University, I think it's Rutgers, signed a multi-year lease for this building. So, there's just going to be classes here because there's nowhere else to put them for now. So, and that I can't do anything about. But everything else, there can be changes made, so we will make changes where we can. And again, on some of the subjective things that were said about me, if people could be a little bit more explicit, it would be helpful. And again, if it's something that you don't want to put out, if you want to come and talk to me one-on-one, feel free to do so. It's a conversation that you have with me is not going to affect your grade, because it's just not. This is the university. People should be able to have conversations, and like I said, discourse is part of learning. And if you have someone that can't tolerate discourse, then shame on them. They're not a good educator, and you can tell them Felicia Bowen said that. So, all right, so that's it for the review, and I'll see everyone next week, and we will start implementing our new changes, which will be the last 15 minutes of the class for questions and clarifications, and incorporating more interactive activities to help with learning, and incorporating more low stakes quiz type questions to ensure that people are understanding what we're talking about. And some of those low stakes quiz questions will be written in an NCLEX format. So those are things that can definitely change, and hopefully we'll have a better semester as we go through. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, let me know, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Bye-bye.